In other news now that we're tracking, India is miffed with the envoys of Britain, France and Germany over their joint article in an Indian newspaper critical of Russian President Vladimir Putin. The opinion piece was published days ahead of the Russian president's arrival in New Delhi. He's all set to land on the 4th of December for a two-day visit. The Ministry of External Affairs has expressed strong disapproval of the anti-Putin article, describing it as unacceptable and unusual. Now, Russia's ambassador has also written an op-ed in the same newspaper, countering the previous article of the three envoys. The question that arises is, was this opinion piece deliberately published now, given President Putin's crucial state visit to India? Joining us live, Ambassador Veena Sikri, former diplomat. Sumit Peet, political commentator, is live with us as well. Professor Veselin Popovsky, Professor and Vice Dean, Jindal Global Law School, is joining us live. Andrew Latham, Professor of International Relations, is also live with us from the United States of America. Let me make a start with you first, Ambassador Sikri. This op-ed is something that the MEA has criticized and has said is highly unusual. How unusual is this in your experience, and what did you make of what was stated in this op-ed preceding President Putin's visit?
Well, first of all, I think it is well known and accepted that ambassadors accredited by their respective countries to India, in this case India because we're talking about it, the primary role of such ambassadors is to promote the bilateral relations with that country, in this case between Germany and India, France and India, and UK and India. So you would expect that all the comments, of course we have a completely free media and everybody is free to write in the media, there's no doubt about that, but you would expect that the comments would be focused primarily on issues which promote or develop or in any way contribute to the bilateral relationship. And we do have very good bilateral relations, in fact, excellent bilateral relations with all these countries. But their comments on an issue concerning Ukraine-Russia conflict directly on President Putin and absolutely on the eve of President Putin's very significant visit to bilateral visit to India, which is coming up beginning tomorrow, this has certainly caused a lot of serious comment and concern, because it's very, very unusual for the ambassadors accredited to India from these countries to write on in such a way on a subject, and particularly knowing about the good relations between India and Russia and the way in which the visit of President Putin is important, not only in the bilateral relationship, but also in the significant role that India has been playing in pushing for peace and an end to the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, and calling for dialogue and diplomacy, and categorically saying that this is not the era of war. So in the midst of all this, to have such an article which is completely one-sided and has not taken into account any of the issues that have led, several of the issues that have led to the war. For example, I can say that the bilateral agreement, strategic agreement between Ukraine and the USA in November 2021 would have been a direct contributor, because it directly called in this bilateral strategic agreement between Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine and the USA, it called for countering Russia in every way possible. So I think the response by the ambassador of Russia, Dmitry Pop, which appeared in today's the same newspaper today, has been a strong corrective. It has pointed out the situation as it developed over the last I would say more than 10 years, and pointing out where the situation is today. So I think that, while that has been done, that's a very good corrective. But I think the issue of writing such an article in this manner on the eve of an important visit has certainly caused a lot of comment all around, not only in the Ministry of External Affairs, but all around, because of the nature of the article and how unusual it is for the accredited ambassadors to write this collectively. You could have had other commentators from any of these countries writing on the same subject individually or collectively. That's perfectly a part of the free media in India. But the comment, especially because the three accredited ambassadors chose to come together and write on this subject.
Yes. Sumit Peet, do you believe this has been deliberately done? Is the timing extremely suspicious? Was this something that was done with an agenda that was deliberate in its nature?
Uday, thank you very much for having me on your show. Sir, a very good question to begin with. In my opinion, It is 101% time. It's 101% deliberate. It is 101% interference in the internal affairs of India and with the foreign policy of India. Indian foreign policy is not we don't take dictations from anybody. We don't need sermons from anybody. You don't have to tell us who Putin is. We exactly know who Vladimir Putin is, and we respect him. And he's a great friend of ours, and we'll welcome him with all the open arms. It's not only the Prime Minister Modi. There are 1.4 billion people of India want to see Mr. Putin here because we know what Russia has done for us and how they have stood for us, and it is our duty to stand with them with the need of the hour. And let me tell you, sir, this article, why did all three have to get together? What was this ganging up together? They could have given individual opinion pieces if they wanted. Where is the need of three people getting together? And incidentally, there are the three countries, Uday, UK, France, and Germany, who were trying to have those backdoor meetings with Witkoff and Kushner a couple of days back. And what did Mr. Putin say today? He said the Ukraine deal is off. It's the Europe who is obstructing peace. It is the Europe who is obstructing peace. It is the Europe who doesn't want this peace deal to ever happen. I'm thankful to Trump for his efforts. But as long as Europe and its leaders are in the game, they will never let this peace deal to happen. And he goes far to say, if Europe wants a war, I am ready for a war. Stop coming through Ukraine. Stop engineering those defects and those, below the belt punches. If you want a war, I'm ready for war. Now, Vladimir Putin is saying, Mr. Putin is saying, it's the Europe who's responsible for all the sabotage. Donald Trump has blamed Europe. Donald Trump tried to keep Europe out of these negotiations, right? So when these are the situations, what is the loci of exactly these three countries who were meeting with Gerald Kushner and Witkoff 2 days back? And when they went today to meet, same gang, Kushner and Witkoff went to meet Mr. Putin's political advisor in Russia, he said the deal is off. We are not interested in this deal. So the question here is, you cannot be running with the hare and hunting with the hounds. And whatever your politics is, keep it out of the India. As Ambassador Ma'am rightly said, you are ambassadors, you're supposed to build the relations. You're not supposed to do the politics here. Let your party or your government spokespersons respond to these developments. You are in this land, you're supposed to look how the interests and the relations, trade, trust, and all other things can be better, rather than you are interfering with the foreign policy of India, which is not your loci, which is not your prerogative, and which is not your job description. Who is asking you to write all this? Because I see it as interference in my affairs. Who my country, my Prime Minister wants to, that is entirely his discretion. That is the discretion of the country. There are a lot of characters which we don't want to go there. Like this failed field marshal. There are a lot of such nefarious characters who have been going to White House. But we don't write, our ambassador there doesn't write Opeds in the New York Times and criticize it. We even have an opinion, that is Mr. Jaiswal, who is kind of put forward his opinion of the government of India, but not the ambassador designated in US writing in New York Times. These are some of the things which Europe should restrain from. There is a much bigger problem which is staring at Europe. The Putin has straightway called you, come and fight with me, I'm ready. I've been preparing for this war. If this is the scenario, then where does India come in? How is India trying to dismantle the peace? How is India responsible for the Ukraine war? And how Vladimir Putin meeting Mr. Modi is going to bring the world down next in 24 hours? This is all hypocrisy. This is all propaganda. You are trying to say that the B4 country, that is India, cannot meet another B4 country, that is Moscow, without the approval of Europe. Is that the new norm? So do we have to take approval from Europe or the EU to meet Mr. Putin? Well, that's not going to happen. Whichever way you like it. So, Uday, the timing, the ganging up, the article, the op-eds, everything is timed to create this dissonance. And even if I can be very direct here, there have been various attempts even made by Trump. He wanted to create rift between India and Mr. Putin. That didn't happen. Now, are these people coming and trying to fill the gap?
Professor Popovsky, what do you make of this op-ed war that seems to have erupted ahead of President Putin's visit? Because we've seen this joint op-ed which has raised eyebrows. The MEA has criticized it. Now we have, of course, another counter which has been published by the Russian envoy in the same paper. So a bit of an op-ed war erupting ahead of President Putin's visit. How do you interpret this?
Well, there is a freedom of speech, freedom of expression. People can write what they want to write, and they should tell the truth. The question is whether the three ambassadors are telling the truth or that telling the lie. I think everything they said is the truth. They said that Vladimir Putin is an aggressor, it is a war criminal, it is somebody who abducted 20,000 children, somebody who is indicted by the International Criminal Court, Somebody, they claim, continues to kill civilians every week in Ukraine. And these are facts. These are not opinions. Everybody in the world shares the facts that Russia is an aggressor, Russia is a war criminal, Russia is abducting children, and continues the war for almost 4 years. Everybody in the world wants peace, but not Vladimir Putin. He's the only man in the world who doesn't want peace. He wants to continue killing children and women and civilians. These are the facts. Not only the ambassadors, everybody among us should recognize the facts. And that's all. Europeans want peace, Indians want peace, Bulgarians want peace, Americans want peace. One man in the world doesn't want peace. His name is Vladimir Putin, and that's it. It's very clear. I don't understand the Ministry of External Affairs' unhappiness with the fact of an article that has nothing to do with India, nothing to do with the bilateral relations between India and Russia. It is a statement of fact about war, about aggression, about civilian victims, and about lack of peace because of Vladimir Putin.
Do you believe the timing is suspicious? Is it an attempt to sour Putin's visit to India, Professor Popovsky?
It doesn't matter the timing. I repeat this every day. I can repeat this tomorrow. I can repeat this after 1 month. I can write about this every day, and I do speak every day about the facts. Whether it happens before the visit, after the visit, 2 months after the visit, doesn't matter. The facts are the facts. These are horrible crimes committed by Russia in Ukraine. They should be spoken every day. Today, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, and every single day from now on.
Okay, let me get in Andrew Latham then at this point as well. Andrew Latham, interesting op-ed war erupting in a leading Indian newspaper, just days and hours before Vladimir Putin lands in India. How do you interpret this? What do you make of what has transpired?
Well, you call it op-ed war. In my line of work, we have a different label for it, which is hybrid warfare, which is kind of warfare between peace and kinetic war, shooting war. The ambassador will recognize this as diplomacy 101. This is part of what diplomats do. We can't understand what's going on. Timing does matter. We can't understand any of this without understanding the state of peace talks between Russia, Ukraine, the US, the European Union. In the context of those negotiations, the Europeans are working very hard to portray Russia as a renegade state, as a rogue state, as a diminished great power, as a no longer great power, as a criminal power. And they've had some success with their domestic audiences. That resonates in the global West, certainly. President Putin has a number of different motives to go to India. They have to do with various kinds of symbolism, various kinds of concrete relations on scientific cooperation, arms cooperation, etc. But part of it has to be to counter that European, that Western narrative that Russia is a criminal state, a rogue state, etc. I'm not commenting on the reality here. I'm commenting on the theater and the framing. And if Putin can go to New Delhi and say, look, I'm interacting in favorable ways with one of the most powerful nations on earth, one of the richest, the fastest growing, certainly a great power, and I'm being welcomed with open arms. And in fact, he's being welcomed that way across the global South. It counters that European narrative that Russia is this rogue state, this criminal state, etc. So I see this as, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way, I mean this in a political sciencey way, this is geopolitical theater. This is hybrid warfare. This is warfare on a different stage, on the stage of these peace negotiations. And so I think the timing matters. I think the ambassador and others have been correct in terms of some of the details.
And how do you view India's response to it, the Indian Ministry of External Affairs response to it?
Well, India is playing a different game altogether, which is a game of representing itself on the world stage as a great power, as having a strategy of strategic autonomy or multi-alignment, as not being at the beck and call of the European Union or Washington, as being its own player, pursuing its own interests and its own values as it sees fit. And if it wants to welcome Vladimir Putin with open arms, the European Union is not in a position, formally or informally, to veto that. That is a post-colonial move, if I can put it that way, but it's also a great power move. Don't take us for granted. Don't treat us as some colonial vassal. We will do what we see as best in our interest and according to our values and our history and our custom. And if you don't like it in the West, too bad.
Okay, let me take that back across to Ambassador Sikri. Your response to what Professor Latham just said, should this be read as part of diplomacy and diplomacy tactics, or is there more to it?
No, I stand by exactly what the Ministry of External Affairs has said, that this is unacceptable and unusual. And it certainly does breach diplomatic norms. And the government of India has certainly noted that. And I can see that what the ambassadors are trying to do, they're trying to break the strong and almost unanimous public opinion in favor of Russia that exists throughout India and has existed for a very long time. It's not a conditional kind of a view. It's a view that has been proved and reproved many times over the decades, and it has stood both countries in good stead. So to try and break that and to create, to introduce a note of incorrect sourness, because I think despite one of your panelists saying that these are the facts, I think the response by the Russian ambassador today has put the correct perspective. There are always two sides to every dispute. This is the one thing to be recognized. And you cannot find a solution if you do not see both sides of the dispute. And India has always been very important in its role, that we have to understand both sides of the dispute. You know that our Prime Minister, President Zelensky, has been speaking to our Prime Minister, President Trump and our Prime Minister have met and discussed. And we know that President Putin has certainly been speaking to our Prime Minister. Our Prime Minister was in Russia on one of the regular annual summits that had taken place 23 times in the last 26 years. And now President Putin is here for the next annual summit, and it's certainly a very important event. So it's not as if one person saying these are facts, these are facts, these are facts, makes them into facts. It doesn't, because you have to look at all sides of the picture. And I think that this is what India has been doing, and that's how India has been recognized the world over as having a definite role to play in all of this. And I think that the three ambassadors breaking all diplomatic norms and forgetting completely what their role as accredited ambassadors of their respective countries to India is, doing this is certainly not acceptable.
Yes, it's unacceptable, of course, is what Ambassador Sikri is reiterating. It should be read as free speech, says Professor Popovsky. Sumit Peer, how do you counter that?
Look, Uday, it's not a question of free speech. When you are a diplomat, a person like even me has speech restrictions, and you cannot broadcast anything, whatever is there. So how can a responsible ambassador representing an entire country get away with anything on the free speech? First of all, I see it blatant interference in our internal affairs. If you want to talk of facts, look, I gave you the example what Mr. Putin told today. Now, then let me put some facts into perspective. If you talk about facts, isn't it true that $140 billion is missing, quote unquote, Donald Trump? There is no account for $140 billion sent to Ukraine, point number one. Is it untrue Zelensky has bought estates in European countries? His wife drives a most expensive Bugatti. Is it untrue? Is it untrue that there are kids, they are putting literally kids and nurses out to fight and go and fight Russians? Point number four, is it untrue he went and spoke to President Trump that give me tomahawks, I'll go and blast the Kremlin out of it? Is it untrue? Is it untrue that President Trump told him to Europe, buy $190 billion of weapons to protect Europe? Is it untrue General Root of NATO went there and said that Europe is flowing in money and we are going to stop Ukraine in its heels? Is it untrue CIA toppled the regime there and installed Zelensky? Is it untrue they wanted to put those nuclear missiles next to Putin, and which Putin has been always saying NATO cannot come here? Is it untrue you have violated 5 times the periphery of NATO what you agreed? Now, when all these things are happening, when all the things are happening, what do you want to do? I mean, you want them to be you want to project portray Putin as the butcher, or if Putin is the butcher, so-called,
Yes.
allegedly.
Okay. Let me get a quick response from Professor Popovsky to what Sumit P just stated. Also, is this an attempt to try and break the consensus within India on Putin's visit, Professor Popovsky, as well?
Well, everything listed is a very good list of what is untrue. All of this is untrue. This is a list of Russian lies. We hear this all over again and again. It is a manipulation, it's a propaganda, and only dictatorial regime can afford that. Of course, there is some corruption in Ukraine, like there is a corruption in every country, but the democracies and the countries with rule of law expose the corruption, and that's why we hear about those corrupted deals, few of them in Ukraine. Very well done, Ukrainians, that they exposed the corruption and they put the officers into investigation. And something I also want to correct, somehow there's feeling that the entire India is a friend of Russia. No, you are a friend not of Russia, you are a friend of Soviet Union, and Ukraine is part of the Soviet Union. And the Secretary General of Communist Party of the Soviet Union signing the friendship with India is called Leonid Brezhnev, and he is an Ukrainian. And the person before Leonid Brezhnev is called Nikita Khrushchev, and he is an Ukrainian. So for 30 years, Soviet Union was ruled by Ukrainians, not by Russians. So don't tell me Russia is my historical friend. It is not Vladimir Putin. Your historical friend is called Soviet Union. Ukraine is part of that Soviet Union.
Right.
Putin is a war criminal. He's an aggressor.
Okay. Okay.
He's no threat of
Right.
every
We're gonna wait and watch
the
now.
people on the street.
Okay, Sumit P, 10 seconds.
We do? Should we leave our Su-57 S-400 $100 billion trade and all? We were never for the war. We always said it's era of peace, not war. If it is between, they have to settle between Russia and Ukraine.
Ambassador Sikri also responding.
India is going into it. What is India's role into it? Why are you pulling ourselves
Ambassador
into
Sikri.
it?
Well, I'd like to point out to your panelist, and he must be very familiar with this, that despite whatever he said about the leaders of the Soviet Union who were from Ukraine and who signed these important agreements and played an important role, we are also very, very aware of the positions that Ukraine has taken after becoming independent on many, many very sensitive issues that India attaches the highest importance to, and where the position taken by Ukraine is certainly nowhere showing any element of friendship and understanding with India. I do not have to say more, but I think it should be very obvious to your panelist what I am referring to.
If I can get 2 seconds, just 2 seconds. Uday?
Yes.
Uday, 2 seconds? Permitted?
Well, your 2 seconds have lapsed already. But anyways, go ahead.
Okay. Just one. According to Mr. Putin, according to a lot of people, they believe the government of Mr. Zelensky is illegal and illegitimate.
Okay.
So how are we going to help in that?
All right. Yes, that is, of course, a separate discussion. But all eyes now on the Putin visit to India. A lot will be on the table. We'll be watching this closely and tracking it as well. For the time being, though, for joining us on this discussion, my thanks to all of our guests. Let's take a short break. Much more coming up.